I'm doing a follow-up with Jeff Younger today. Jeff, you received some unpleasant news.
I did. I was doing a roundtable with you, and I got served with a new lawsuit. It looks like my ex is trying to get sole possession of my children again.
I can't imagine how frustrating that is to sort of go through court, fight, sort of win some concessions, but then just constantly being barraged with litigation.
Yep. It's very expensive. Two, it's incredibly time consuming. And three, what it amounts to is if you have a divorce, you have no privacy anymore because with the discovery, in Texas, it's called level 2 discovery, which equates to the same federal level 2 discovery. I mean, they get, my check registers, all my bank accounts. In the past, they've subpoenaed all my employers. They've subpoenaed people I got business cards from at networking events. You just lose all privacy all of a sudden, and you just don't get it back until your kid's 21.
And the whole goal is at this point for your ex-wife is she wants to be allowed to socially and then presumably medically transition one of your twin boys.
Yes, that's the goal. And to do that, she needs to prevent me from having 50-50 possession, prevent me from having any control over his education and so forth. And because she knows that if I, even with the time that I spend with him now, which is a little bit less than 30% of the time, he's essentially becoming more and more of just a normal boy every day. He's rejecting a female identity every single day, more and more. So she knows that if I get 50-50, she won't be able to, get him on hormones.
So I almost feel like after talking to other parents who are in similar situations, it almost feels to me like the person who can afford the best lawyers is going to win. And in some cases, the stakes aren't as high. But in your case, it's the difference between your son being allowed to grow up and be a normal, healthy, active boy versus your son being pushed to accept a female gender identity and starting puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and maybe even surgery. And so it just feels like it's sort of whoever is the biggest bully, whoever has the most money, whoever gets the best lawyer wins. And I don't understand how that can happen. It doesn't fit with my idea of what America is, of what justice is, of what family courts ought to be.
Wow, I mean, you're really striking at what probably is the fundamental issue. One thing that I think it's important just at the outset when we talk about this is to understand what justice means in the justice system. And that's at the federal and the state levels. Justice in the justice system has a purely procedural meaning. All right. So if all of the procedures were correct and everything was done by the book, and the decision might be horrible, it doesn't matter. If the procedures were correct and nobody broke the rules, it's considered just. So justice in the justice system is a purely procedural notion. It doesn't have any relationship to outcomes, doesn't have any relationship to any ethical concept, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think you're right. It's very strange that you would be given a criminal trial, but when the lives of children are at stake, you're not provided a lawyer. And I think we need to admit that family law is not civil law. That actually in America, we have three kinds of law. We have criminal law, we have civil law, and we have family law. And if you ask the judges, I've been to some of these continuing education events for judges, sat in on them. I mean, they basically brag about the fact that they don't follow the law, that they do what's in the best interest of the child and all sorts of other weird things that we would consider pretty bad.
Well, and in this case, the best interest of the child, defining that really depends on your ideology, because clearly your idea of what's in the best interest of your son is dramatically different than what your ex-wife's idea is. And so it's kind of luck of the draw, depending on what judge you get.
It is. And the other thing is that judges will outsource these decisions. They'll outsource them to a psychologist to tell them what is in the best interest of the child, right? But here's the thing, federal law is pretty clear on this. Parents get to decide what's in the best interest of their child. So what happens when you have parents who have radically different ideas about what that best interest is and how should we handle that? It doesn't appear that civil law is a very good way to do that.
Although, in another case, when you and I were meeting, Rob Hoogland was also part of that meeting. And at that same meeting, he was also served. And he is being charged with contempt, I believe,
Yep.
and potentially going to be facing some jail time simply for talking about his daughter and the fact that Canada removed his parental rights to decide her medical treatment, and allowed her to get testosterone at the age of, I believe, 13 or 14.
13. Yeah.
13, she started getting testosterone treatments against Rob's will.
Mhm.
And then they said he couldn't even talk about his case. And so he has been talking about his case, and now he's facing jail time for merely talking about his case. And granted, Canada is not the US, but it seems like it's going, and these are countries that used to really respect the rights of parents and individuals and really look out for the best interest of the child, that have now been taken over by LGBT ideology. And these trans activists have so much money and so much power. They get lawyers, and then they get the therapists to testify. And a parent who's just trying to prevent their child from being harmed by these treatments really struggles. And what is your plan?
Well, let me just tell you that in the United States, these kinds of gag orders are not only common, they're customary.
So are you
Uh,
going to be under one?
I am under a gag order right now.
Okay.
I'm not following it.
So what are the
When,
ramifications?
when people ask me, well, are you following the gag order? I say the constitutional parts of the gag order I'm following. Yes.
So is there a chance that you could be thrown in jail the same as Rob? I mean, is that something
Oh,
that
absolutely. The next hearing is really to determine if I go to jail or not. So there's two issues with me. One is a gag order. They haven't really made that the biggest issue. The biggest issue is that I'm not following the counseling regime that they put on me. So they put on a counseling regime which requires a $10,000 retainer, which has to be replenished. They charge me $250 an hour. I have two counselors, Dr. Susan Fletcher in Frisco, Texas, and Dr. Linda Threets in Carrollton, Texas. They're both an hour away from my home. So it's 2 hours there and back just to even get to these appointments. When you work the numbers out, it's about $5,000 to $7,000 a month. And it's about 28 hours a week with
Well,
travel time.
it's very bizarre because I looked up these therapists, and these are not sort of your run-of-the-mill therapists.
No.
These are incredibly expensive, high-profile therapists, and I cannot figure out how a court could mandate that you take your child to someone who charges such exorbitant rates and who is clearly sort of in the public eye already.
Yep. So this is what's going on in Dallas County, and it's common throughout all the counties in America. There are a group of trusted therapists that deliver the decisions that the judges want. And the judges essentially act like people who are medical child abusers. They go diagnosis shopping with the psychologist that will tell them what to do and give them the answer that they want. And since my contention is this about my counseling regime, that it is an effective taking of my children. And the scariest thing about the agreement with the Dr. Fletcher, who's going to be supposedly the person who's supposed to do therapy with my kids, she wants to do secret therapy with my kids. She wants the right to talk to my children without me being present, with no record of the meetings. And she doesn't want me to even be able to ask my children what they talked about. Now, of all the parents at the round table we were at, all of them had the same story, didn't they? It was therapists in secret who pushed the children onto hormones. And that's the program here. That's exactly why the court chose these people. And that's what the game they're trying to play with me. So I'm refusing to cooperate with that game. And I very well could go to jail for not cooperating with the counseling regime because I'm not signing those counseling agreements. I'm not taking my children in for secret therapy. I also believe that it's unconstitutional under the Texas and US constitutions in this sense. I have a right to exercise my parental rights. In Texas, parental rights are simply the mirror or dual of parental duties. Your parental right is simply the right to prudently exercise, right? So I have the right to make educational decisions because I have the duty to be prudent about my children's education, right? In order to exercise all those rights, medical, education, you name it, right to religious instruction, everything, I have to apply my own material resources to make that happen, okay? To clothe my children, I have to buy it. To take them to the doctor, I have to pay for it, right? For them to get an education, I have to pay for that, right? The problem is this counseling regime takes away all of my material resources and effectively, therefore, removes my ability to exercise my parental rights. And I analogize this to land rights cases in the United States. So if the government puts so many regulations on land that the landowner can't exercise production on the land or can't enjoy the benefits of the land, the federal government recognizes that that is a taking of the land and they have to pay the owner for that. Well, they have done an effective taking of my children by taking all of my resources.
Not to mention your time, because you have a limited
Oh,
amount
yeah.
of time with them. And so not
Oh,
only
yeah.
are they going, threatening to take your
That's
resources,
all
but
my time with them,
yeah,
by the way.
yeah, that would be
That would take all of my possession time would be in therapy.
and I am just horrified at the secret therapy. I can't think of another situation where we would be expected to subject our children to
Yep.
strangers and not have any
There's
not
no
have any
oversight over
sense,
these
not to
people.
know what's going on in there. And some of these therapists, I mean, I wouldn't even trust myself alone with them. I mean, I just don't feel
Yeah.
like they're safe people, let alone a child who's easily influenced. So I don't understand how a court can mandate that I mean, to me, that's just, it's like, it's like they're emasculating you in so many ways. They're taking away your resources, they're taking away your privacy. And then you're not even allowed to talk to your kids about what happened in therapy. I mean,
Isn't that
in what
crazy?
other, I mean, I can't even, like, how does this make sense?
Well, it's all part of a game plan by the psychologist, by the APA. So in Texas, we actually have laws. So even if this woman was to do something terrible to my son, I can't sue her. They have total immunity for their recommendations. Um, Part of the agreement that she wants me to sign is she wants me to voluntarily waive the right to make ethical complaints against her. Yes, I'm not making that up. It's in her agreement. She wants me to voluntarily waive the right to make ethical complaints unless I go to court with a lawyer and get a judge to say that I can make an ethical complaint.
That's just, all
That
of
seems to me a violation of ethics itself.
yes, this is all just so surreal. I mean, it just, like, every step of the way, it just sounds more and more absurd. Rob might go to jail for trying to talk about the fact that the state is giving his healthy daughter testosterone, which is permanently altering her body. You're being told that you have to take your child to some outrageously expensive therapist and wash your hands of it and just hope that she doesn't do anything horrible to your kid. I mean, this is surreal. It is beyond bizarre. And I mean, I'm
Yes.
hoping that maybe your case will be the tipping point, or that Rob's case or some of these other cases. But I've talked to so many parents who are in your situation, and the biggest frustration is money, that they want to fight this, but they don't have the resources to go, suit after suit after suit. And I think that that's one of the techniques of these activists, is that they just
Yep.
keep
They
throwing
will
lawsuits
down.
at you. And
Very
and and it's really hard to stay on top of that. And talk about taking away your resources. I mean, that's just another example.
It is the whole concept here of like how we handle the law really needs to be addressed. We've created a legal system only for legal experts. Like you and I don't have real access to the legal system, right? You have to access the legal system through highly paid, attorneys and lawyers. And this legal system wasn't created for lawyers; it was created for us. And we really need to change that. I mean, that's a long-term program. But in the short term, I have to say, if you're reasonably intelligent and you're patient with yourself, you can do pretty well as a pro se. You can definitely reduce costs as a pro se. And There's a new approach to the law called, collaborative law, or sometimes assisted law, where, a lawyer will help you and assist you to represent yourself, right? And I think ultimately we're going to have to look at doing that more. And I think that's going to lead us to challenge some other interesting areas of the law. One of the things is that, if somebody comes to me and says, Jeff, do you think I should file a motion to do this? I can't answer that question. That's practicing law without a license, right? But that's not what practicing law without a license means. Practicing law without a license means representing someone else in court.
Impersonating them.
Yeah, I have a free speech right to talk to my fellow citizens and cooperate with them and help them however I wish, right? Those have just never been effectively challenged. And that's something else that we're going to have to deal with. Because that's another way they keep us from helping each other.
Right.
We can't really share our experiences and our wins because it's practicing law without a license.
Well, and a lot of people are under these gag orders and they're afraid to speak out because they're not at a point in their life where they're willing to face the possibility of going to jail or,
Yep.
other things that can happen. So you have this case coming, assuming everything goes swimmingly well and that it works out really well for you. Is there anything to prevent your ex-wife from filing another suit?
Nope.
So this is
Nope.
just like, it's,
Every 6 months, 6 months after
I
they
just
do,
can't, I
six
can't
months after they
imagine.
do, I know, 6 months after they issue an order, they can file another suit, and they do. I get filed on every July, just like clockwork.
Wow.
Because I have my boys for my extended possession time in July, and that's her way of ruining my vacation. She files a lawsuit every July. That's just how it works. And
And it,
it's in the civil, our civil legal system is completely cracked.
and it seems to me like this is going to have some impact on your boys as well. I mean, it's hard enough having parents that are divorced. It's hard enough having contention and having them, have different ideas about how you should be parented. But then to be, having, these court hearings all the time, that just adds stress, I think, to the children as well as to
Yeah.
you who's trying to fight this.
Yeah, I mean, look, an easy way to put that into just numbers is, if you look at the legal battles that I've fought with my ex, I could have put both my boys through medical school and law school. That's how much money we've spent.
Does that just drive you crazy? I mean,
Yeah,
I just feel like that's where there has to be another way. And I'm not sure what it is, but to me, this is just absurd that we have parents in your
you're
situation.
right. And it's so interesting. Parents are in this situation, but psychologists have gotten the legislators to give them immunity from this very civil court, right? You can't sue them. You can't bring them to civil court for this very reason, yet they're willing to subject us to it.
Yeah, I mean, in Rob Hoagland's case, Dr. Wallace Wong basically said that his 13-year-old daughter was a transgender gay boy. Um, and there's nothing he can do about it. I mean, it's just amazing. And then Brenton Nitz has,
Transgender gay boy. I mean,
yeah,
you got to just get your head around this nuttery.
right. And the same thing with Brenton Nutz's son, Miles. The therapist, Troy Weber Brown, said that his little boy was actually a transgender lesbian. So and wanted him to call him, her. I get so convoluted. And that's what I
I know.
think I'm
I
so
can't figure it
frustrated
out.
by this, is that to me, like, I mean, there are so many other things to be arguing about. The fact that this is even an issue is so confusing to me. And I can't imagine as a parent, like, watching your child be led down this path that you know is going to be harmful to them. As in your case, it's not just your son, it's his twin brother who's watching this, who's also gotta be so confused by these messages
Oh,
that
yes.
when your son is at your house, he's normal, he seems to be functioning well. When he goes to his mom's house, all of a sudden he's transgender.
Yes.
And I have you.
He's transgender, but there's a lot of things like she has done his room up like a girl's room, and she has a transgender flag up in his room and everything. Well, James won't sleep in that room. James sleeps in his brother's room. He will not sleep in that room. Okay. He does little acts of rebellion like that. Recently, Jude was FaceTiming with his mother, and his mother said, "Okay, let me speak to your sister." And Jude said, "He's not my sister, he's my brother." He stood up to her for the first time.
Good.
And she got really angry and said, "What?" And he said, he's my brother, not my sister. And she said, well, some people say that. And Jude said, well, I say that.
Wow.
And he knew full well he was going to be punished for that. He stood up for his little brother.
Well, and this is another instance. I've talked to a mother who has a son who's transitioning, and the son is really bullying the siblings. In this case, it's your ex-wife that's bullying, and
Well,
it's
it's also her daughters. Her daughters
oh,
are,
really?
well, I think her daughters picked his name. They were the first ones, I think, to affirm him as a girl. Yeah, they're full all in too.
I mean, when I'm hearing this, my first response is, sort of mama bear is those kids need to get away from her. That this is someone
They
who's
do.
actually, this is abusive in my view. This is
Yeah,
this
it
is
is.
not just like a difference in parenting. This
Yeah,
is
it's just
this is
common
a,
sense.
and how is it that the courts are even? I mean, it seems to me like in a case like this, you could actually call like the Division of Family Protective Services and have them go in there and why are
We've
you
been
why are
through
you
we've been through
brainwashing this child?
seven. We've been through 7 CPS investigations, and the attorney general called for a special inquiry into my case. And in every case, CPS clears her of any child abuse claims.
So what's next? I mean, is it okay for
CPS is
kids?
fully on board with the trans agenda.
So if your son ends up developing anorexia and your ex-wife wants to affirm him as being chubby, would we have to go along with that too? Like, where is the line here? It just
I
seems.
don't think there's a line. The line is basically being picked by leftist psychologists, and I don't think there is a line. And I think the pedophilia acceptance movement is a good example of the fact that there just is no line. You've probably seen on Facebook, I post often things like this. Oh, wait, I was told by gay activists there was no slippery slope to polygamy. I was told by gay activists there was no slippery slope to, kid transgender stuff. They keep saying there's no slippery slope, but when you're sliding down the slope to the craggy rocks below, they keep telling you that you're not on one.
No, there is. It's so steep. It's a cliff. It's not a
Yeah,
slope. It's just a
yeah,
drop. So,
absolutely.
so do you feel like your kids are safe? Because one of the other
No,
things that I noticed is that one of the news reports that I saw was a couple who also have a transgender child, and they were interviewing them about your case. And apparently, these are friends of your ex-wives and children that your son plays with. And so, if she's exposing them to transgender activists, do you feel like he's safe? And maybe she isn't, but it seems like based on
oh
the news
no,
report that I
she
saw that
is
she
the
is.
child custody evaluator in the last court case from last December. Um, he did a total hit piece on me, but there were certain admissions he had to make, and one of them was that she had really gone overboard pushing transgenderism. And when she took him in for the interviews with the child custody evaluator, he was in these very tall high heels and Desmond his amazing drag kid clothes, which was way over the top. Um, but she does that a lot, and my children aren't safe. Um, I really look. Here's my view of it. If you're willing to put a child on a path to sexual mutilation, if you're talking about, let's just talk about what it is.
Yeah.
If you're willing to put a child in a situation to have his balls cut off, you'll kill him. She'll kill my kids. I think she's dangerous.
Yeah, I
And
mean, because she's a medical doctor, so she knows what the long-term side effects of
she
puberty
does.
blockers are. She
She does.
knows that they're not reversible.
She
She
does.
knows the damage that cross-sex hormones do. She
She does.
knows what's, getting his
Yeah.
testicles cut off and potentially his penis cut off. And she
Yes.
must know that people who medically transition have a 19 to 20% higher rate of suicide.
Yes.
So
She knows all.
there's no justification for what she's doing. I
No,
mean,
there isn't, unless you posit that she just wants to hurt somebody.
right, right.
And I think that's really behind a lot of this. I think guys like Wong and these other people, Dr. Albritton, I think Dr. Albritton, who did my custody evaluation, he recommended my child be socially transitioned, but that he not be medically transitioned without consent of both parents. he full well knew that if he socially transitioned, that will inevitably lead to physical and surgical transition. So he was just playing both sides of the fence. But really what it comes down to is Dr. Albritton didn't like me very much because I recorded all of our sessions together. And I was not willing to take the bullshit arguments from the American Psychological Association. And I was well acquainted with the scientific literature, and I'm a statistician. And I was able to interpret I could make this claim pretty easily. I can better interpret the evidence than he can because he's not a statistician. And so he got really upset with me, and he wrote a report just to show me who's boss. And I think a lot of these psychologists are that kind of type of person. They went into psychology to fix themselves.
Or to run away from their problems. I almost wonder if they can,
yeah.
If they can look at other people and diagnose their problems, then they don't have to face their own.
Exactly. So he wrote a what amounts to a fraudulent report. And the judge didn't believe him. That's why the judge, even though the report said all that, the judge didn't do anything in his report. The judge actually never mentions his report and never cites it anywhere in her judgment. Nobody believed his report. And for good reason.
Well, anybody who believes that it's okay to harm children's bodies should not be listened to. I mean,
I agree.
Anybody who accepts the idea that this is a normal developmental path is not, that's not a sane, that's not a reasonable idea that this is a normal developmental path.
No, it isn't.
So Jeff, there's a chance that you could go to jail. You're definitely going to court. There's a chance that you could lose the ability to protect your son. Mm-hmm. What can we do? What can we do to help you? What can we do to help your son?
Okay, so the biggest thing is we have to brief everything, okay? So we don't just go in and make oral arguments. We brief everything to make sure that we have an appeals record so we can take it up to the appeals court to overturn some of these crazy family court rulings. This is very expensive, right? You're talking about writing small books at $250 an hour, right? So donations help, and that's
$250 an hour, that's $250 an hour.
$250 an hour, yeah. Right. And it's because we have to essentially make an appellate record for everything that we do. That it's very expensive, right? The second thing is, so just donation money for legal expenses is massive, right?
And where can they do that?
So if they go to the Save James Facebook page, there's a donation link there, and it's right at the very top. You'll see it when you first get to the page. Just click that link, and it's very easy. You can even set up recurring donations.
I'll make sure to post that at the bottom of the descriptions.
Great. And it's a Christian donation site that does not censor people who are against transgender. It does not censor Christians for their beliefs. And they charge very, very low fees. So the vast majority of that goes to my lawyers. That's really nice. I really like them. The second thing is, and this is a local thing. It has to be done more locally. Although I would love it if you would come down for my trial when it happens, because I really want to meet you in person. But the court watchers are very important. And let me tell you what the deal is on that. To me, the psychology of it is very interesting. Probably if you go into a family court and people didn't know you were there, if you could, as Socrates says, if you could put on the ring of Gyges and become invisible, right? Would you still be a moral person? Well, you go into invisible into a family courtroom. You would probably witness between 5 and 10 felonies committed by judges every day.
Wow.
Okay. But when you have a gallery full of witnesses, the judges don't do that, because even though the judge can contain and constrain the court record, it can't do that for witnesses who are there. And in America, we have open trials. So anybody can attend any trial anywhere in America. And I think everybody should. You should go visit a civil court, your local civil court. You should go visit a local family court. And you should definitely go to your local federal courthouse and watch a few criminal trials. Okay? See how your court system is working. It's a right of citizens to observe trials. We have public trials in America. It's a very rare right. Okay? Very, very few countries have public trials. All right? Make use of that. It totally changes the judge's behavior and their rulings. So having a court watcher group, forming court watcher groups, to go watch these trials and simply observe. You may have heard, I did an interview with Rob up in Canada, and I mentioned in Canada and France, they have a Roman Catholic protest group called Les Sentinelles. And that's all they do. They simply observe these things. That's all they do. And they have a tremendous effect in France. They don't say anything, they simply observe. It's so effective that in Texas, lawyers from Coons Fuller, the law firm that I'm fighting, have adopted kind of a new tactic to overcome the court watchers. They swear in every single person in the courtroom. And then they invoke the rule, which forces all possible witnesses out of the courtroom. So they effectively clear all of them out. So I've had to teach court watchers here a little script, which will force the lawyer to prove that they have knowledge of material facts before they are sworn in, right? And there's a lot of tricks like that I can tell you. So that's a big one. Court watchers, right, is the second big thing. The third big thing is you have got to get laws, because the courts and psychologists aren't going to do the right thing. We just have to accept that. They're not going to do the right thing. Electing good judges is not going to help you, okay? You have to get your legislatures to change their votes. Now, there's a big problem there. The gender clinics get the local banks and local financial institutions on the hook for loans to build these gender clinics. So when you have state and local banks with $100 million in loans for a clinic, the legislature is not going to shut it down because the Chamber of Commerce comes out against it and everything else, right? So you're going to have to really figure out a way, and I haven't figured that out yet, but I need some smart person to do that, right? We need some savvy political people who can look at tactics like that and come up with tactics where we can get some laws passed. And finally, I think we need to take a page from the leftist handbook here. Honestly, you know, a person like that psychologist that Rob's had to deal with, you know, these judges up where you're at that are doing this to children coming out of the schools, it literally should not be safe for these people to walk the street. You should take their photo into every gas station. They shouldn't be able to buy gas at those gas stations. You know, that needs to go to their church and their country clubs, and they need to be harassed everywhere that they go.
Well, they're child abusers. I mean, they are child abusers.
They are.
And
Then what we need to do is start treating them like that. If a child abuser moved into your neighborhood, you take action, right? We need to start doing that with these people and start treating them like the child abusing scum they are, and stop being afraid of the positions that they hold. That's my advice.
yeah, I think that that's really powerful. I think you're right about the judges, because one of the things that's happening in my state, and you know, every state's different, but in my state, depending on the judge, a person can walk in and say they're transgender and get their birth certificate changed. And that's up to the judge. There isn't a law that guides them. It's just completely up to them. And
Right.
in family court, a lot of these things are just basically up to the judge. So one of the efforts that I've been involved in is, you know, the Vulnerable Child Protection Acts, which is it's a bill that's going to be introduced in many different states next legislative session to prevent medically transitioning children.
Brilliant.
And the problem is, like you said, that there are reasons that chambers of commerce don't want to support these efforts. And so we have to get a grassroots effort going, because I really believe most people don't know what's going on, because when I tell them, they always say, oh, you're just making that up to be transphobic. They do not believe me. They absolutely think I'm making it up. And once people realize this is really happening, we really do have 8-year-olds on cross-sex hormones. We really have 13-year-olds who are getting their breasts amputated. We have 16-year-olds who are being castrated. Yeah. And we have kids even younger than that who are being chemically castrated. Yeah. Once people realize that, you know, they're not going to be supportive of it. We just have to figure out a way to mobilize them. And I feel like we need a call to action. That
You're right. This is one thing about reactionary and conservative politics in general, is it's very good at organizing and very poor at mobilizing. So I think we don't try to figure that out. I think we just go and see how the left does it and just copy it.
Well, and they've done a really good job. I mean, they've intimidated so many people. One of the reasons so few people, so few detransitioners like me speak out is because they get threats. They get death threats. They get, most recently, somebody posted that they were going to dox me and get me fired. They've tried to get me removed from my housing. They've tried, they've made threats. One of them told my son that there were people in my community that wanted me dead. So people are afraid to speak up. But the thing is once we start speaking up, there is strength in numbers.
There is.
And that's what we need to remember, is that it's, you and Rob are in a position now where you are kind of the spearhead. You're going to have to take the brunt of it. But we can be behind you, supporting you. And it's our civic responsibility and our moral responsibility, I believe, to stop this from happening to children.
I agree. And I think if you look at how the left does it, they use swarming tactics. And I think if you look that up and Google that and understand what that is, they spontaneously cooperate. And our guys are not doing that for whatever reason. They're just not doing that. But it just should, people have to accept public shame, people yelling at them, people not allowing them to sit in restaurants if they abuse kids. It's just that simple. And until we are willing to do that, I don't know that we can win.
Well, and I think that that's part of my frustration, is it's almost like people are too polite, or they don't want to be judgmental, or they're trying to be loving and tolerant. And they don't realize that as they're doing all this, children are being mutilated.
Yes. How are we supposed to be polite to people who cut healthy sex organs off of kids?
Or who encourage
No
them
way
to believe that they're inherently flawed, that there's
Yeah,
something inherently wrong with their body.
right. Yeah. And essentially inducing mental illnesses in vulnerable young children.
Right. And oftentimes these are children who already have,
Yeah.
underlying issues. And
Yeah.
so to take a child who already has some issues and then to convince them that there's something so fundamentally wrong with them that they have to change their appearance. I
Mhm.
mean, it is criminal to me. So I
It is.
appreciate that you're willing to stand up, and I hope you don't go to jail. But if you do, perhaps it will be a wake-up call to people that they're going to jail a dad who's trying to protect his son.
Yeah. And look, I mean, at some point, when the justice system becomes criminal, being a criminal becomes just. And so, there may come a time when jail is exactly where I belong. And, I think we have to prepare for a situation in which, because I've often said this, and you've probably seen this on my Facebook post as well. I don't think we live in a democracy in any sense of the word. We vote, we have elections, and they have some effects, right? But actually, we're ruled by judges and we're ruled by agencies. So we're basically ruled by a critarchy, ruled by judges who serve an oligarchy. And so we have the worst of two forms of government, critarchy and oligarchy, the absolute worst of them. So, there comes a point where, when you're reading a Kafka novel, when you realize it doesn't matter what you do, right? If they're going to do secret sessions with your children,
Yeah.
to have some sort of procedural notion of justice, right? There's really no limit at that point. At that point, what we have is what the Declaration of Independence calls a long train of abuses, all aiming at one goal: tyranny. And we have to accept the meaning of that.
Well, and I am so thankful for you and others like you who are um, really willing to take the brunt of this. As I said, I think you're heroes. I think that you're going to go down in history as one of the people who made a big difference in the world, because you're not going to just step back. And that's another thing, is as a father, so many fathers, I think, are they're afraid of the family court systems. They lose their access to their children. They don't have the funds to fight for their kids. And oftentimes I think they just walk away because they are so frustrated, and they feel like maybe when the child's grown up, they can reconnect. But in your case, you can't do that, because if you wait, your child's going to be chemically castrated.
That's
Your
right.
child is going to be permanently damaged. So you can't just hope to reunite with him later on, because he's not going to be there anymore. Hey, Rob.
Rob, how
Hi,
you doing?
again, I just got the email. I was on the phone with Jen Smith, of all people.
Oh, that's
Oh,
really
cool.
funny. Well, we were just talking about the fact that you both were served summons while we were meeting, and Jeff's talked about sort of what's happening in his case. Do you want to share what's happening in yours?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was busy on the phone for part of that last time too, so I'm not sure what's going on with Jeff. Other than I'm aware, he got served for. Is it also for breaking the gag order?
They're focusing on enforcement or contempt enforcement for me not going to the counselors. They're trying to do secret counseling with my sons,
Okay.
where
Wow.
I'm not allowed to know what they talk about, and I'm not even allowed to ask my sons what they talk about or do in this counseling session. And every parent I've spoken to has had counselors secretly push their kids to medical transition. So I'm no way I'm agreeing to that.
Wow. Yeah. Ah. Yeah. I haven't been.
I'm looking at 6 months in jail. And then when I come out in 6 months, if I say I don't want to still sign that over, then I'll put me back for 6 months.
Oh man.
And they'll do that until they're 21.
It's crazy where things are at. They're jailing parents now for speaking out against this, exposing it, you name it, whatever we do. It's just such a cover up, and it's just
They don't want us to talk about it.
Well,
no,
and
it's
Rob,
just
I was listening to an interview you did. I'm not sure who it was with. It was maybe Van Maren.
I did one with Jonathan Van Maren of
Yeah,
Life.
and you were talking about, and this is very graphic, but you were talking about the physiological changes that are happening to your daughter's private area as a result of the testosterone. And I just started bawling. Just the idea that your daughter's body is being so permanently changed by something that, it's damaging, it's dangerous, and that you are not able to stop this. And I don't know how you stay sane.
Well, like I've said, it stunts their growth right at the point of taking, Lupron and testosterone. Their body doesn't develop beyond that. That's why you have all these issues like osteoporosis. Their bones haven't fully developed, and then they never do. And yeah, the same thing happens with the genitals. And these, I mean, some people will say, "Oh, that's a little penis." It's not actually. It's just that um, I believe it's the cervix or the vulva or whatever it is, just because of the testosterone, it just kind of pushes out a little bit, and it looks like this tiny little growth, and that's all it is. And this is why they're sterile. I mean, I've talked to people. I don't even think they can have a regular sexual life because I don't. It just doesn't work. And with boys, eh, you know, whatever size your penis was at the time you start taking these drugs, well, that's your penis for life. I mean, imagine, right? I mean, having this little tiny boy penis your whole life because you decided to take estrogen and Lupron. It's just destroys these kids. I don't know, just it's terrible, terrible what they're
And
doing.
to be clear, Rob, what you're doing right now, talking to us, potentially could land you in jail.
Oh, I'm sure Aaron Brewer is somewhere in those court documents that I'm going to be seeing when the RCMP drop them off in the next few days. So, but
So
but you won't be alone. There's a whole bunch of you. So
I just wonder, I asked Jeff this, and what can we do to support you? Because I am just horrified at the fact, first of all, what's happening to your daughter. It just, I can't stand it. Sometimes I wake up at night and I pray that she's going to be okay, because it's such a horrible thing that's happening to her. And then for you not to be able to speak out about it without facing jail time. So can you tell us, what can we do to help you?
Yeah, in terms of my daughter herself, there is nothing that can be done. It's too late. That's the unfortunate truth. Um, I mean, what can be done for her is down the road, and hopefully she realizes what she's done and becomes one of these girls or boys that detransitions like so many of them do. That's when they're going to need the support of so many people, because that's when the LGBTQ cuts ties with them and makes their lives miserable. And then they say, well, you were just a fake transgender person, so just get out of here. You weren't real. Meanwhile, we all know how they got involved in the first place was thanks to these activists, right? You know, the one thing, and this is, I think, what's so important, and I think Jeff would agree, that's why we're talking, is educating people. People have to know what's going on. That's why I was willing to break gag orders. That's why Jeff is willing to come out and talk, because that's what makes change. And I see in Canada and the US, and well, in other countries as well, that this is making a difference. People are hearing these stories and they didn't realize how terrible it was. And I don't even think, in my case, that I've undersold it. In some ways, it's worse than I think I've even managed to project onto people. And when people hear what's going on, they believe it. And it's way more authentic when I come out and say, hey, this is who I am, tell my story, as opposed to, you know, this is CD and he is the father. You know, it makes it way more personal, and people can tap into that. So that's why I think it's really important. And even, you know, with the Federalists, for example, it was important for them. I mean, they found the pictures, I didn't, but for them, they told me, because I said, well, maybe we don't want to do that. And they said, well, by putting a picture up, and I know Jeff did the same thing with his son, it brings it home to people, right? Like, this is a real child. And look, this is what she looked like. This is, and in my case, this is what she was looking like as time went along. And I honestly, I don't have a picture of her now. I have pictures of her when she was socially transitioning, cutting her hair and things that I've seen people have obviously been able to find online. And you just see how the transformation even at that point. And of course now things, it's like a runaway train with the drugs. So educating people is key. And as you may be aware, and this is what I was actually on the phone talking with Jen Smith about in part, is this national inquiry, and the fact that the Conservative Party up here behind closed doors is generally talking about this and supporting, you know, what I'm doing with this case, and they were horrified by the medical transitioning of minors. And that's all because we're educating people. These people didn't know what the stuff was before. You would go back to the last federal election, which wasn't that long ago, and politicians who even mentioned some of this stuff were just getting kicked out of their parties. And now you've got people that are running for the leadership of the Conservative Party openly talking about this case and campaigning on it and calling for national inquiries. And that's because people like Jeff and I are talking about it. And that's the best thing you can do. Go after your representatives, whether they're, you know, state or federal or provincial here, whatever the case may be. And because they're the ones that I mean, that public pressure has to be applied to them. Because what I've discovered is you have a lot of good politicians that will just stand on convictions through thick and thin, but a lot of them, they stand on whatever the public wants because they want their job. And if people are telling them this is what we want, they want to get voted back in. I mean, they'll flip-flop. And unfortunately, that seems to be the case. And so public pressure does make a difference for a lot of these people. And that's the most important thing I can say is spread the message, tell people what's going on, and help me and Jeff educate people. And just like what you're doing with your platform and others, you know, just that's what this is about. I think the media right now is our best weapon, in my mind.
But I think that's why you know, I'm doing everything I can to shed light on this and spread the word, and hopefully others are as well. What is your can you sort of define your trajectory? So you were slapped with this order a couple of days ago.
Yeah, this isn't really an order. This is what happened is, and of course I've told you about the whole case. I'm not going to get into all the protection orders and what led up to this, but to understand, I was under a pretty extreme gag order. I broke the gag order. I started talking. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that I did was banned instantly in Canada. All these different journalists were sent legal notices to take their stuff down. I know Google and YouTube did take anything down that was Canadian content. So you're seeing stuff in the States that we can't see up here in Canada in terms of interviews. I mean, I'm not going to say where stuff can be found, because if they're watching, I'm not going to give them a heads up on stuff. But I mean, people are resourceful. I mean, they're resourceful. They seem to find stuff. So, So what the courts did is they're quite upset with me because I'm not listening to their, conduct orders and protection orders and so, yeah, so Justice Tammin, who was the judge in this, the most recent judge I've had, I think I've been through about 6 or 7 of them by now, and he said that because my daughter had said she doesn't want to go after me for breaking the gag order. She made that clear. But she could only prevent the civil contempt of court charge by saying that. So Justice Tammin elevated it to criminal contempt, which he had the power to do. And of course, the government, the Attorney General was there. And so he pretty much handed me over to the Attorney General of British Columbia and says, he's yours now. And you can take him to prosecution services. And that's what happened. And so now it's the government of British Columbia that is serving me with an indictment that they're going after me for criminal contempt of court for telling my truth, telling this story. And I face up, well, not 6 months, but 30 to 45 days in jail to begin with. And we'll see what happens. So I have to be in court on September 2. Apparently, if I don't show up, they will arrest me without a warrant and drag me in. So I have to be there. But then I told them, I said, I haven't missed a court date in 2 years. So, I mean, this isn't going to be a problem anyways. So I just said, I hope the courts are open. I didn't explain why. Some in ways I feel bad for this lawyer because I don't think he has any idea what he just jumped into. So this hasn't been a regular court case. And I don't know that he wants his name alongside that of Barbara Finley and these other justices, but it'll be interesting.
So Rob, you're facing these charges. What about the doctors who are doing this to your daughter?
Well, they're not in any trouble. They're protected by the government. That's the whole point of the gag order, was to protect all these people, protect the schools, protect what's going on to our kids. And it's because it's what I know, right? I mean, when I went through the protection order, I could only talk to my 2 lawyers, and I was entitled to my own thoughts, simply because how can they police my thoughts? But they actually put that into the court ruling that I was allowed to think. I mean, who writes that in a court ruling? You're allowed to think, as if they were giving me like some real freebie there. But and every file is sealed. And in fact, when a new judge comes on, the file is sealed from them. These justices can't even see the files. So everything for them is kind of brand new, and we have to catch them up because they don't even have access. I don't have access to my own files. They're sealed from me. But what scares them all is it's all in my mind, right? And so if I talk, there goes their sealed files because I know everything that's gone on, right? Because I was there every day. And this is my life, right? So it's a big threat to them, for sure. And so they need me to be quiet by all means possible. And that seems to be what they're willing to do.
So as we finish up here, Jeff and Robert, is there anything that you want to sort of message that you want to impart to people who are watching this?
Well, I mean, my message is simple. This should horrify every parent in the free world, if not, I would say the entire world, but definitely in Canada, in the United States, that they can do this to parents now. They're throwing them in jail. And what they're saying is, hey, look, we can do this to Rob, and he's high profile right now. You know, he's got the media on his side, the ones that are talking. He's got public opinion, and we're still going to get him. And what they're doing is they're saying we're coming up with a way where this will never happen again. This one got through the cracks. How did this get so big? And they're learning from their mistakes. And so what they're going to be doing is they're going to say, hey, look, if we can crack down on him, how dare any other parent who has no attention, nobody knows who they are, and they're going through the same thing, are going to speak, because they can squash them without anybody even knowing what's going on. And so, yeah, so they're going to be setting an example here. I'm sure that's the plan. We'll see if they're successful or not. I mean, there's more chapters to be written here yet. And I even know from talking to Jen Smith that the Attorney General, he overheard them say that they're working on legislation so that they can, instead of having to go after individual cases like mine or individual journalists who report, they're coming up with something where they can just put somehow a ban on this stuff ever getting out at all in the first place, so that they just never go through this again. They don't want this happening again. They're going to try and eliminate this from the very start. And so I think this is very important. So my last word, people need to wake up and pay attention, because all these parents, this is going to affect every single one of you, at least in Canada. And then what happens here will trickle down into the States, just like stuff in the States tends to trickle north in terms of these kinds of issues. So we tend to follow one another, regardless of who goes first on different things. So,
You know, I think that we have to focus on getting people to do things, and that means going to court and watching these cases so that judges control the court records. But if we have 50 witnesses in a court to a judge committing felonies on the bench, pushing parents around, those people can come out and let everybody know about it, even if the judge seals the record. Typically, in America at least, especially in Texas, courts cannot enjoin third parties. So when somebody shows up in a court and watches the case, there's nothing the judge can do. Those people can talk about it within community. So court watching is big. And I think we need to take a page out of the left's playbook. You know, you remember the pie throwing thing the left used to do? When conservatives would talk up to give talks, they'd throw pies at them.
we're going way.
They throw eggs at them. I think we have to harass these people. I think these people need we need physical signs that when they're out in public, they're not welcome. Child abusers, scum, are not welcome in our communities, and it doesn't matter if you're a member of the bar or on a bench. And I think it's time we take that to them. And I'm talking about nothing violent, but I think we need to let people know with words and some of the leftist techniques of harassing and deplatforming people. We need to start using those.
Well, I just thank you guys both so much for standing up for your kids and for standing up for other parents. Rob, in your case, you said that your daughter has already been damaged. You can't undo that, but you are now fighting for the rest of us. And I want to point out that this has to do with our children now. And if they continue to use these techniques, it's not just going to be about children who transition. It's going to be about anybody who starts saying things that the government doesn't like. Now,
That's
we
right.
talked about the slippery slope earlier before you were here with us, Rob. And we are on a slippery slope in so many different ways. And one of them is in our basic freedoms. If you are not allowed to talk about what's happening to your daughter, you're not allowed to decide about their medical care. And then you get thrown in jail for trying to stand up for your daughter, for trying to stand up for other parents. We're in big trouble as a society if we let this continue.
That's right. Rob, I'm going to try to make it up there, man. Can you send me the details, where the court is, the address, and the time and the date? I'm going to try to make it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, no, I can do that. I'm waiting to get the documents. I know it's September 2. Okay. I'm going to guess 10 a.m. at the courthouse in downtown Vancouver, British Columbia here. Okay. But I'm going to be getting all the details soon. And in fact, I'm eagerly looking forward to getting that so I can see exactly what's going on. My understanding is that September 2 is going to be a preliminary hearing where they kind of set up their case. And then they're going to be a trial date for down the road.
Okay. So I'd rather show up for the trial. So.
Yes.
Yeah, but
so
I definitely intend to show up.
So yeah, I should first get the paperwork, and then I'll have a better understanding of all this stuff.
Hey, Rob, is Rebel Media going to be there?
They've been there in the past. I spoke with Kian Bexley of Rebel Media yesterday, and they seem interested. You never know. They've been in and out of the case. I know Sheila Gunn, also with Rebel Media, did report on this recently again. So it depends on there's different journalists that.
I mean, they're getting harassed too, right? So
they're probably getting harassed as well. Yeah. They all.
So Rob, are witnesses allowed in the courts in Canada?
Oh, we've done very well. My last court case, we were in the biggest courtroom in the courthouse because we had a couple hundred people show up.
Okay, I need to get my passport. I was just telling Jeff to pick me up on his way up. I don't have a passport, and I'm not sure how easy it is to get one right now with COVID.
No, the sheriffs have told me that the only case that's bigger right now is the Y-Way case that's in Vancouver. We're their second priority in terms of the amount of people and the security that they have come in, because even though the mainstream media isn't involved, too many people know what's going on in spite of that.
Right.
So we get great turnouts where we're being moved courtroom to courtroom and filing in, and I hope so. I was told that I would be in a physical courtroom, and I said that's important to me. I don't want to be doing this via Zoom, and I just hope they don't say we can only have 10 people in, because I mean typically they have about 50 lawyers, so I don't even think that's possible. I mean their lawyers alone would break the rules. So yeah, I hope with this COVID that it doesn't mess things up, because it's important. It's good to see all these people come together in the support that I have been getting, and I hope that continues, because otherwise, again, it works in their favor and becomes more of a secret court thing again, where there's nobody there, and it's my word.
Got
I
it.
think that you've got so much support, but if there's anything else we can do, let us know.
Yeah, no, and same with you and Jeff. We're all in this together. I mean, there's a lot of us doing things in different capacities. I mean, Jeff and I are in the middle of court cases, but there's journalists that are also taking risks by talking about this stuff and reporting on it, especially up here in Canada, like LifeSite News, the one you're talking about, Jonathan McMahon, that's
Yep.
Canadian, and he didn't hide anything. So I mean,
That's great.
that's bold, right, on his
That
part.
is.
Well, and that's getting, I'm not sure if you heard, but there was a case in the UK where it's a little tangential to what you're doing, but it was I believe it was a therapist who was working with kids who are gender confused, and the UK shut down his bank account. And so, this is getting pretty intense, that people are willing to go to these extremes in order to forward this agenda. It really makes me feel like there's a lot more going on related to this than they're letting. This is not just about the transgender agenda. This is about undermining parental rights, undermining freedom of speech, undermining basic freedoms.
Yeah.
Yeah, my case started out as something that was simply about a child getting cross-sex hormones and being able to consent to that as a minor against my parental consent. And this thing has spiraled into all those areas. It's just everything that's wrong in the world today seems to have kind of come out on one way or another in this case. It seems to have touched on all these issues. This case was never meant to be a freedom of speech case. And it evolved. It just took legs of its own. And it just evolved into all these different directions.
Well, I think a part of that is because you're not backing down, and thank you both for not backing down.
And I think it shows the lack of care of the judicial system for the rights of the people that appear before it. They really aren't there to protect the rights of people before them. They're really to decide who's a winner, who's a loser, and punish the loser. And the loser they just decide they don't have any rights. And they're absolutely, judges are just absolutely horrified when you assert your rights. They just are used to people, they're not used to people doing that anymore.
Well, and they just overwhelm these people, right? They come in with not much money. And, in the Court of Appeal, there were 50 lawyers working on the other side with endless amounts of money. And I got fortunate that I was able to do it. I had pro bono lawyers that were really on my side as well. A lot of people fundraising, doing different things, and we were able to do it. But if I was on my own, they would have squashed me at the very beginning, and I wouldn't have even had the resources to do anything, and it would have been done.
That's what they do. Yep.
Right.